All right, welcome to our second to last week of lessons. We're going to start with this warm-up where you are solving for x in both those diagrams, so pause the video and unpause when you're ready. All right, so here's what I got, x equals 7 for the first one, and on the second one, the important first step here is you multiply both sides by x minus 1 because that's the denominator, and then you solve from there. You can either leave it as a fraction or a decimal. A fraction is the exact answer though. So we're going to start our new unit. And this unit is called inverse functions. So the first thing we're going to do to study our inverse functions is think about what is an inverse function. So we're going to first graph these points and then describe the pattern and write an equation for it. Okay, so I'm actually going to graph them first and then write the equation second. So we have our first point, -2, -3, 0, 1, 1, 3, 5, 3, 7. So as we can see, these points make a line. So our equation of that line is we have a y-intercept of 1 and a slope of 2. So our equation here is y equals, or f of x, I guess, I don't know why I wrote y equals, but it's all the same, 2x plus 1. That's the equation of that line. So we're going to use this equation in this table to study some inverse functions. So you're going to recall that an inverse operation is an opposite operation. So an inverse function is an opposite function. It switches x and y for each coordinate pair. That's the big idea. X and y are just going to switch. So we're going to use this idea to fill in the table for the inverse, and this is read as f inverse of x, and the first coordinate pair is done for you. So I'm going to go back on my paper and I'm just going to do it on the same one. If you printed it out, you can do it on that one. But here we have our inverse. So our inverse function, f and f inverse of x, is we're just going to flip all of these points. 3, 1, 5, 2, 7, 3. So that's the inverses. All you need to do for a table is really easy, is you just flip those points. So we're going to graph these new points on it. -3, -2, 1, 0, 3, 1. And so we get this other line right there. So that is the inverse of our regular line right there. That's how that's working. So I'm going to erase this table for now just so we can read the questions, but I'm going to leave that graph so we can return to it. And how is your equation related to the function? So we need to write an equation for the second line. That's what it's asking. So let's do that. If we go back and look at that graph right there, well, it has a y-intercept of, if we try to guess, it looks like it's -1/2 right there, and then we have a slope of 1/2 there. So our equation is y equals 1/2 x minus 1/2. So let's go back, and we said, how is our equation related? Well, our equation right there is this has a slope of 2x, and that has a slope of 1x, 1/2 x. So there's some relation there. And then +1 and -1/2, I don't quite see a relationship yet, but there's something there. So it does make sense because their slopes are opposites. So why does it make sense that they're inverse? The slopes are 2 over 1, and 1 over 2 is kind of the opposite slope. So we already did plot the points, and we want to say how are the graphs related, and we're going to look for some symmetry. So let's go down and let's look for some symmetry right here. Well, you can see it's kind of a sort of reflection here. All right, let's see if I can get that right. It's a sort of reflection where if we draw this line here, that it's symmetrical across that line. So that's what flipping that points does. And this line here is actually the line y equals x. It's like the points like 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So it reflects across that line. All right, so for some practice, I want you to try this on your own, where you're going to take this function and you're going to find the inverse. You're going to make the table, the graph, and the equation of both of these. So let's just start with the equation of this line. Where if we increase by 1x, we're going up by minus 3. Minus 3, so that pattern is it's going down by 3, and then 0, negative 7 is our y-intercept. So our equation here would be y equals negative 3x minus 7. So I want you to find the inverse here, or for the table, the graph, and see if you can find the inverse function, the actual equation. So pause the video and try that out. So here's what I got for my table and my graph, but I can't quite figure out what the y-intercept is just by looking at this graph. So we kind of have a problem, because I can see that this slope goes like down 2 over 6, which would give us negative 1/3 x, but we don't know what that missing part is, what the y-intercept is. So we need some sort of better strategy to figure that out. So let's see if we can come up with one over the next few lessons. So the way we're going to do this algebraically without having to make that table or draw the graph and kind of guess is the first step is we're going to take y and x, our equation, and we're going to switch the place of them. So y equals negative 3x minus 7. That's our equation from the original graph in the last one. We're going to write that as x equals negative 3y minus 7. So all we did is we switched the place of the x and y. What we're going to do now is we're going to solve for y. So first we're going to get rid of this minus 7, so we're going to add 7 to both sides. So we get x plus 7 equals negative 3y. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 3. Now, something to pay attention to here is, since this is like x plus 7 divided by negative 3, I'm going to split this up. So I'm going to do x divided by negative 3 plus 7 over negative 3. And that gives us y. So our y-intercept, that one we couldn't quite tell, was like negative 7/3. And then this is where you really see that 1x over 3. So I want you to try that strategy out with this equation here. So the equation is f of x. F of x is just another way of saying y equals 1/3 x plus 8. So pause the video, try to solve for the inverse, and then unpause when you're ready. So for my y, I got 3x minus 24 equals y. So to close out this lesson today, all you need to do for your homework is we have 3 equations here for you to solve. Now I want to talk about something here before I let you go, and it's for like this one. If we had something like, I'm just going to make one up because you're going to need this for the next 2. If I had something that said 8 equals 3/4 x, and we needed to solve that, first we're going to multiply by 4 to both sides, because that gets rid of that 4. And that becomes 32 equals 3x, and then you divide both sides by 3. So that's kind of how you get rid of that fraction, is you multiply by the bottom one and divide by the top one. So here, multiply both sides by 3 and then divide by both sides by 2 once you have that 2/3 part by itself. So good luck, submit a picture of that homework, and that's your job for today. Good job.